Movidiam podcast. Join the conversation with global innovators as they share their journeys, discuss the state of the industry, and share insight into the future of media for brands, agencies, and production companies.
Hello and welcome to the Movidiam podcast. Today I'm delighted to welcome James Razzall, who is the President of Advertising America for Framestore. James, welcome to the Movidiam podcast.
Hi there.
James, it's great to have you on the Movidiam podcast. Can we just place you a little bit for some of our listeners in terms of your sort of career journey? Like where did it all start for you getting into the sort of creative and advertising space?
So I grew up in London and was looking for a sort of career path to follow. I'd studied graphic design at college, and I was very interested in the creative industries. And back then, in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, it was very much the path in was via starting as a runner. So managed to get a few opportunities in television production and post-production. I worked at a TV studio as a runner, very much entry level, and doing odd jobs, making tea, all of that.
It's a familiar story for many.
Yeah, exactly. And then I found post-production. A friend of mine was working at a small post-production facility in Soho, and got me an opportunity to come in and do a bit of work. And I just loved the, I sort of fell in love with the technology and it was all very interesting, and it was an exciting kind of world to be in. I mean, the job, when I started, primarily I was walking around Soho, delivering, broadcast tapes to other studios. And, it was just a sort of eye-opening life in a way. Yes, that was kind of how I got in, and it was.
And now, Framestore probably considered one of the most sort of, high profile sort of visual effects houses, post production businesses, and sort of innovation companies, around the world. And you're right at the top of that pile in the advertising space. So that's quite a journey. Seen a huge amount of change in that time frame, from moving tapes around to sort of fiber optic cable to kind of platforms that are driving the advertising business today. Can you comment a little bit about is it business as usual, or is the change fundamental?
The thing that when I joined Framestore, which was back in 2000, what fascinated me about Framestore is they were definitely on the edge of what was being done in London, the cutting edge they'd invested heavily in the technology, and they were really pushing what could be done, with those tools and getting, amazing work out. So, I had an opportunity to come in there and I was fascinated by what was being created and just the sort of general spirit of the company. And through the 20 years that I've been with the company, it's just continued to evolve. And that's always been, the challenge really for businesses like ours, because, you really can't stand still. Technology is moving at a speed and a pace that, we all just have to keep up with. So, yes, it's quite fascinating how fast it's moving.
It's been relatively democratized, or some would argue that some of the technologies being sort of the cost has come down, the power has gone up. The Movidiam network in particular is connecting lots of smaller remote teams, and the cloud workflows are developing, so visual effects can be increasingly pulled together in the cloud. Are these central hubs of sort of studio life and production life in Soho, whether that's in Culver City or in London, are they still central to the kind of the creative business, or in a world such as today, which might see more remote working going on, or familiarization with that, is change more imminent?
I think it is, and I think obviously the current situation is going to push that forward even faster, but. There are certainly, the world has moved, even in the last 10 years, there are small companies that can put out work that is on a level, potentially on a level to the big studios. the challenge is obviously they can't do that at scale. So there is always a demand for, the big projects which have immense amounts of data that have to be passed around. Yes, the cloud is making that simpler. Yeah. And, you can get amazing stuff done with, 3 people working out of a WeWork or something. But, the realities are that there are challenges that are thrown up by separation, by time difference, etc., which I think on very big shows, you do want to have a core team that are together.
Sure.
Obviously, that is changing daily. And I think, I'm actually optimistic that, the future will be a lot more, cross-site working. And that's something we've been pushing at Framestore for a very long time.
And what are the governing factors there? Is that sort of compression? Is that data storage? Is that speed of the internet? Is it, preparedness for people to actually behavioral change required? I mean, what are the things that stop an immediate adoption?
I think a bit of all of those. I think one of the things that we struggle with as a business is a lot of our work is now being, a lot of our clients are demanding very strict security requirements.
Sure, yeah.
So, we have to have, certain projects will be on completely separate servers and, you're not technically under their guidelines. You're not allowed to even be connected to the internet on those terminals that are working on it. So there are just a whole myriad of things that
to prevent any leakage or bleed onto the social channels in advance of release.
Exactly. If you're working on sort of new characters for movies that everyone is desperate to see, or if you're working on products that we're given CAD data for products that haven't been released, which are beyond valuable. So that obviously throws up a number of challenges. Not that it's impossible. There are ways around that, and obviously we are working to create even more secure systems that we can work across our network, and it's all proving to be great. But I think the sort of fundamental one is the communication one. And that's where it can be done with technology. We all know that you've got these platforms that you can have an open video conference and you can, everyone can, in essence, feel like they're in the same room. But there's something, to be said about the 2 artists sitting next to each other and being able to turn around and talk to each other, and the lead being able to be over their shoulder, sort of pointing out what they need to change. All things that are achievable with technology. It's just sort of more mindset, I feel.
Mindset. I think mindset is the key word. And just to invert that umbrella a little bit on that concept there. So I completely understand that the independent servers, the disconnected computers, if that material is in such demand at that stage, the internet, if it's done one thing, it's put it out there and iterate fast and get feedback. Are these studios and large IP owners of these projects missing a trick on building community in releasing the odd little bit a bit early? Complex question. I mean, I know you're complex question, but I'm just thinking about Stephen Fry tweeting from the Harry Potter set early is problematic from a legal and IP perspective, but it does build a lot of interest in the Harry Potter project.
Yes, exactly. And I think, the marketing around certain products and around certain movies, there's definitely things where, stuff is released and it creates, a huge amount of hype. I think for us, we don't want to be the ones who are. No,
sure. It's got to be part of the program. It can't be an accident. It's got to be part of the program. Yeah, no, I understand that. But I think the world, the world is in episodic things, and you're thinking, you're seeing people, such as Jeffrey Katzenberg and building, short form, very fast turnaround projects with the whole network of different people. It's a very different idea to the sort of long form, highly curated, highly polished work. Which there's lots of stuff which doesn't necessarily respect quality, but it's all about getting it out there. And again, I'm thinking more of perhaps the B2C world, like the TikToks and the consumer content. I know it's a different thing, but do you think there's a shift in the market appetites as people are being reared on following different sorts of media?
I really do. I really do. And I think, that's one of the things that we've been actually pushing to get ahead of for a long time. And we obviously do a lot of character, CGI character work across all, commercials, movies, etc., TV stuff. And, one of the challenges was always that it takes so long to get content out. So we were very early adopters of building tools for our clients where we could create these characters in real time using game engine technology.
Sure.
And being able to create, we made a number of these tools where we would supply a system to a client or a studio, and then they could actually create real time content with the characters. And the quality of them wasn't quite as high as it would be if you were sort of pre-rendering it and it was for a movie or a commercial, but it was certainly good enough and looked like the character.
Sure.
And I think user-generated content, we've done some stuff with Google where we were creating these AR stickers with lots of characters from one of the big IPs that we worked on.
Yeah.
And it was actually, you can have your selfie and you can put a character in the background of it.
Sure.
So those are the things which I think are, people want to be immersed in these universes.
Yeah,
they want to feel part of it for sure. It's
and this is a nice segue. So if I was thinking about Frame or building a mental picture of Framestore, I might just think the massive theatrical releases, but actually you've got this sort of innovation side of the business, which is looking at virtual reality, augmented reality, and how those things mosaic together in the advertising space. What are you seeing? People have been talking about AR and VR for a relatively long time now without mass adoption. What's your vibe there?
We've been, obviously we were very early to the to creating VR experiences, and to me the sort of home use stuff is slow because people aren't necessarily rushing out to buy those headsets en masse. I think who knows with this current situation globally, it might be a big upswing in
a good release from the continual news updates.
Exactly, but I think some of the successes we've had certainly have been in that licensed IP world where we've been creating, with Game of Thrones, we've done a number of experiences which were location-based experiences. So the original one was at South by Southwest, and then we did a collaboration with AT&T that was in store. There's those. It's using VR technology, but it's not trying to necessarily sell it to someone who's got their headset at home. There would generally be a version of it, some sort of spin-off that you could download and play at home.
Sure.
But, it's quite fascinating in that we can, because we have all of these assets, being able to sort of convert them and use them in real time. I think once slightly long-winded answer, but I think the AR, to me, the AR kind of tools, and once everyone starts getting these wearable, it's rumored obviously that there's going to be a number of these wearable glasses that are coming out for AR. I think that is going to be the moment where the penny will drop.
Sure.
And I think for companies like ours, we definitely are kind of at the forefront of creating the content that would go into those.
Yeah. And in terms of your business model, because we do get sort of marketers and large brands coming to the site where they're looking to Movidiam, who's a network that we run. In terms of your business model, are you getting work from agencies? Are you going direct to studios? Are you going direct to brands? I mean, this advertising side of business is presumably brand related. So how do you socialize, your capabilities with global brands that have the, $100, $200, $500 $1 million to spend on a VR or AR or an innovative campaign that you guys might have the technology to execute?
It's a very interesting question because obviously because we came from that sort of post-production facility world.
That's where people's minds are.
Exactly. We're there. We're sort of central in that world. Now, we obviously have capabilities across so many different areas. So we have, like you said, we have this whole immersive division creating experiences. We have a theme park ride division creating content and actually to some extent designing theme park rides. And then we've obviously got the film and episodic and advertising areas. It all comes back to creating, very high-end visual content and storytelling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as our outreach, we have to, we work with traditional advertising, creative advertising agencies. We also work directly with brands. So many brands are bringing their creative in-house, and it's often the same relationships we had with people who were on the agency side who are now working inside brands.
Yeah.
Then obviously we have very deep relationships with all the studios and all the technology companies. So it's quite a kind of broad array of opportunities that we can tap into. And then we also, we work very much with the, production companies. We have our own production capabilities, but we also work with a lot of, very high-end A-list film directors and commercial directors. So it crosses the gambit. Really.
So say I'm a $20 million independent film producer. I've got a $20 million budget, and there are elements of complexity that will need Framestore style thinking. How, maybe 20 sequences in the film. How do you start that conversation? Are you building right at the beginning of the process, or is it just the producer connections, or is it do you ever get cold inquiry because of the brand? I mean, how does it work? Is it still a tactile business and sort of the Dog and Duck in Soho or the coffee shop in Soho? Well, not so much now, but
yes, yeah. I mean, it is. I think so much of our business is about relationships. That to me is what makes or breaks a project. We need to have the trust of our clients, so there are a certain number of producers who just trust us to be able to deliver and make them look good and, get a great result. I think we are working on initiatives to try and drive business in new areas. And we have a whole kind of large new business development group who are approaching clients and approaching agencies and we're pitching immersive ideas to studios, So but I think it all comes down to relationships. That's the heart of success in any of these projects.
Yeah, very interesting. And what's on the horizon that's kind of energizing you? What makes you jump out of bed in the Framestore world?
I mean, I love I mentioned this. I mean, I love the theme park. Well, this is something that over the last probably 5-6 years has just become this huge area for us. I don't think anyone from our side ever sort of really comprehended that we would be creating content for these rides. And we've done a ton.
And is that with like a Disney style thing, Disney theme park, or
Disney, Universal, lots of Chinese theme parks. We've got what's fascinating about it is that it's really the same. A lot of it comes from the IP that we're doing in film.
Yeah.
So, there'll be a spin-off ride that will be branded after a movie franchise.
Sure.
And then there's only us and a couple of other companies who have the assets to create that content. Yeah. But what's so amazing for our teams is, they're used to sort of working on a flat, it's going to either be on a big movie screen or it's going to be on a television or on a mobile phone. Suddenly you're sort of immersed in a project which was probably going to last for 6 months, a year, some of them even longer, maybe 2 years. And, massive amounts of budget to get the stuff done. It's a huge amount of work. But, you're going to the site where they're actually building this huge construction site and getting to ride on it, watching work in progress. And, it's just a fascinating
Yeah, well, I suppose
the evolution of what we do.
Yeah, really well, interesting. And I suppose the stakeholders you're dealing with are probably more sort of architects and construction people, alongside the typical sort of cameramen, camera teams, and visual effects artists. Exactly,
and the fascinating thing is the sort of the people who've worked in the ride industry for decades. There are people who've just lived and breathed theme parks. And obviously the technology has made those those rides become something that we would be part of. But in the past, it was all, smoke and mirrors and, giant.
Yeah, well, the log flume gets the TV a bit wet, so Framestore can't be involved yet. Yeah. No, but things have moved on. I think particularly interesting. I noticed the leadership of Disney have Bob Iger stepped to one side, and their theme parks business leader is now the new CEO. So that's a telling moment for content and theme parks sort of merging.
Yeah, and I think there's to the point of people wanting to live these franchises, for kids who can go into these parks and then be immersed. I mean, the whole Star Wars land, Galaxy's Edge, that they've built out here in Los Angeles. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's a sort of mix of theatre and just amazing production value. And the rides are sort of really pushing what can be done. And some of them, there's VR, we're creating rides where it's actually VR, so you're actually wearing a VR headset. People are creating roller coaster rides where everyone's wearing VR headsets, and you can, create whatever content you want around the experience of feeling the G-force and going on the ride. But, and the great thing is for the people who own the parks is you can then reboot that. It's not like having to rebuild a new roller coaster.
Yeah,
you can create new content.
It's very interesting. There is a parallel, isn't there, between what the internet has done and distributed basically made, channel 1, 2, 3, and 4, made it thousands of different content niches delivered by Netflix and Amazon and others. And in the same way that what I knew as Universal Studios and Disneyland is going to be distributed into all the niches, Star Wars World or Snow White World or whatever it might be. And I think that's a very interesting thing. If you've got the community, you can of course develop these niches, and it's all about the assets and the experience then.
Completely. I mean, it's quite fascinating. And then I sort of thinking into what's going to happen in the future. It's sort of getting into that holodeck kind of world where you are actually in some virtual world. Who knows where it's going to go.
Well, I think again that's when the VR and AR piece comes back to it. And you don't need the infrastructure investment in the theme park. It just is on the headset in the bedroom.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think people will like to come together for the time being, as soon as they possibly can. Well, look, James, it's been very, very interesting sort of chatting away with you today on the Movidiam Creative Leaders podcast. Thanks very much indeed for your time, and we'll post this out to our community, and any questions might come back to you. You might find 2 minutes to answer them.
Of course, thank you.
You've been listening to the Movidiam podcast. Movidiam is a world-class network of production talent complemented by secure tools that blend hiring, communication, and payments. Find out more at movidiam.com.